The blazing orange sky of Nexus Prime cast an ethereal glow over the commercial hub's gleaming spires. Commander Naira Vex gazed out from the panoramic viewport of the diplomatic quarter. Her vibrant orange skin, a stark contrast against the silvery interior walls. Her high-bound silver hair reflected the dying light of the alien sun as she contemplated the stalemate that had defined the past 3 days of negotiations between the Cryoran Elite Guard and Earth Defense Force. The mining rights to the tourist sector were valuable, especially considering the recent discoveries of rare mineral deposits. But these humans were proving to be unexpectedly stubborn in their demands. General Draus would expect results soon, and Naira had never failed a mission before. She turned away from the viewport, her military-grade exoskeleton briefly adjusting to her movement with a soft whir. The Cryoran military had genetically optimized their soldiers for generations, enhancing strength, reflexes, and endurance far beyond what natural evolution could provide. It was part of why she found humans so quaint. They relied on crude technology instead of biological perfection, choosing to remain physically inferior rather than embracing genetic enhancement. Naira checked her communication device, still 2 hours before the next round of talks. Perhaps some physical exercise would help clear her mind. The diplomatic quarter included several fitness facilities, including an Earth-style gym that the human delegation frequented. Her lips curled into a slight smirk. It might be entertaining to see how these physically deficient creatures attempted to compensate for their natural inadequacies. The Iron Paradise Gym was exactly as primitive as she had expected. Crude metal weights, gravity-dependent resistance machines, and not a single acceleration chamber or neural muscular stimulator in sight. The facility smelled of human perspiration and sanitizing chemicals, unpleasant but tolerable. At the far end of the room, a lone human male was engaged in some form of abdominal exercise. Naira recognized him from the delegation, Captain John Reed of the Earth Defense Force. He was bare-chested, his body covered in a sheen of sweat, as he completed a set of movements with a weighted metal disc held against his chest. Humans. Such inefficient creatures. They spent hours performing repetitive motions when a simple 15-minute session in a proper cryoran acceleration chamber would provide equivalent results. She approached, not bothering to mask her contempt. "Captain Reed, isn't it? Fascinating to see Earth's delegation wasting time with such antiquated methods of physical conditioning." John Reed set down the weight plate and stood, reaching for a small cloth to wipe the sweat from his face and chest. His eyes met hers with unexpected confidence. "Commander Vex, I didn't realize Cryorans had an interest in how humans train." His voice was calm, almost amused. "But then again, there's value in tradition. These antiquated methods have served humanity well for centuries." Naira scoffed, gesturing to the primitive equipment around them. "Serving well is relative. Your species' physical capabilities remain significantly inferior to Cryoran standards. Our genetic optimization and nanomuscle enhancement deliver performance that your crude iron lifting could never achieve." Reed's expression shifted to something Naira couldn't quite interpret. Was it amusement? "Is that so?" he replied, setting aside his towel. "Care to test that theory?" "Test? Against a human? That would hardly be a fair comparison." Reed's smile widened. "Just a simple demonstration. Then, punch me. Right here." He pointed to his exposed abdomen, the muscles clearly defined but nothing extraordinary by Cryoran standards. Naira blinked, momentarily confused by the strange request. "You want me to strike you? Is this some peculiar human ritual?" "Just testing your theory about superior Cryoran strength versus inferior human physiology." He gestured again to his midsection. "Unless you're concerned about injuring me too severely." The implied challenge was clear, and Naira felt a flash of indignation. Did this human actually believe he could withstand a Cryoran strike? Her species had 3 times the density of muscle fiber, enhanced by nano-reinforcement that Earth technology couldn't begin to replicate. Very well, Captain. But I'll moderate my strength. I have no interest in explaining to my superiors why I hospitalized an Earth diplomat. Reed merely nodded, standing relaxed with his arms slightly away from his sides. Whenever you're ready, Commander. Naira took position, calculating the appropriate force to demonstrate her superiority without causing permanent damage. She would use approximately 30% of her full strength, enough to leave him gasping and perhaps with minor bruising, but nothing that would require serious medical attention. She struck with precision, her fist connecting solidly with Reed's abdomen. The impact was like hitting a reinforced bulkhead. Pain exploded through her hand, radiating up her arm as she felt 2 of her metacarpal bones fracture on contact. She couldn't suppress a gasp of shock and agony, stumbling back a step while cradling her injured hand. Reed hadn't moved, hadn't even flinched. He stood exactly as before, not a trace of discomfort on his face. "Are you all right, Commander?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. Naira stared at him in disbelief, then down at her already swelling hand. "How? That's impossible. Human musculature can't—" "Maybe you should have that looked at," Reed interrupted gently, reaching for his shirt. "The Level 3 medical bay is just 2 floors up. Would you like me to escort you?" Naira straightened, ignoring the throbbing pain. Pride wouldn't allow her to accept his assistance. "That won't be necessary, Captain. A minor miscalculation on my part." As she turned to leave, Reed called after her. "Commander, when you're feeling better, I'd be happy to continue our discussion about interspecies physical capabilities. Perhaps over drinks at the Cosmic Drift around 2100 hours." Naira paused at the doorway, glancing back at this impossible human. Everything she knew about Earth physiology suggested what had just happened couldn't have occurred. Either her intelligence briefings were woefully incomplete, or John Reed was something different. "Perhaps, Captain," she replied coolly, not committing either way. But as she made her way toward the medical bay, Naira couldn't deny the curiosity that had been sparked. Whatever Captain John Reed was, he had just shattered her preconceptions about humans as thoroughly as he had broken her hand. The Level 3 medical bay was mercifully empty, except for a single Taurian physician, whose 4 eyes widened slightly at the sight of her injury. "Commander Vex, this is unexpected," the doctor said, gesturing toward an examination table. "Please, sit. What happened to your hand?" Naira hesitated, reluctant to admit the embarrassing truth. "A training accident." The Taurian doctor said nothing, but gave her a look that clearly communicated disbelief as he passed a medical scanner over her hand. The device projected a holographic image of the damaged bones. 2 fractured metacarpals, clean breaks, fortunately. May I ask what you struck?" Naira's jaw tightened. "Something unexpectedly resilient." "I see." The doctor reached for a bone stimulator, carefully positioning it over her hand. "The stimulator will accelerate bone regrowth, but you'll need to wear a stabilizer for at least 48 hours. I'd recommend avoiding any training accidents during that time." As the doctor worked, Naira's communication device chimed with an incoming message. She activated it with her uninjured hand, and a small, holographic image of General Draus appeared, stern-faced as always. His orange skin darkened with age, and his silver hair cropped short in traditional military style. "Commander Vex, I require an update on your surveillance of the Earth delegation. Have you made progress in discovering their true agenda?" Naira's mind raced. Her official diplomatic mission was known to the medical staff, but her secondary assignment, to investigate the Earth representatives for potential weaknesses or hidden agendas that could be exploited to Cryoran advantage, was classified information. "General, I'm currently in the medical bay. Perhaps we could discuss this at a more appropriate time." Draos's expression hardened. Your assignment takes priority over minor injuries. Commander. The Supreme Command believes the humans may be deliberately stalling negotiations while they secretly prepare for resource extraction beyond the agreed parameters. We need evidence of their duplicity, or information we can use to undermine their position. I understand, sir. I'm pursuing a potential lead now. See that you do. And Commander, if you discover that these talks are a facade, you are authorized to take measures to ensure they fail. Our military interests take precedence over diplomatic niceties. The hologram flickered out before she could respond. The Taurian doctor, who had politely stepped back during the communication, returned to finish applying the stabilizer to her hand. All done, Commander. The pain should subside within the hour. Return tomorrow for a follow-up scan. Naira nodded her thanks and left the medical bay. Her thoughts turbulent. General Dryos's instructions complicated matters. If she was to investigate the Earth delegation properly, perhaps accepting Reed's invitation would be a logical step. He clearly wasn't the physical inferior she had assumed. What other misconceptions might she be harboring about these humans? By 2100 hours, Naira had changed into civilian attire, a sleek, silver bodysuit that complemented her orange skin and silver hair. The stabilizer on her hand was visible, but unobtrusive. She made her way to the Cosmic Drift, one of Nexus Prime's more upscale lounges that featured a transparent dome ceiling, offering stunning views of the nearby nebula. John Reed was already seated at a table near the dome, dressed in dark civilian clothing that looked significantly more refined than the exercise attire she'd seen him in earlier. He stood as she approached, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Commander, I'm glad you decided to join me. How's the hand? Naira took her seat, studying him with renewed interest. Healing, 2 fractured metacarpals, but nothing that won't be fully repaired by tomorrow. Reed winced sympathetically. I apologize for that. I should have warned you. Warned me about what, exactly? That your abdominal muscles somehow defy the known limitations of human physiology? A server approached, and Reed ordered drinks before responding. Not all humans are created equal, Commander. Just as I imagine not all cryorans share the same capabilities. When the server departed, Naira leaned forward. You're enhanced, then? Some form of cybernetic implants or experimental modification? Reed shook his head. Nothing so exotic. Just good genetics and dedicated training. Though I admit, I've spent more years developing my physical condition than most. Years? Naira couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. Cryorans achieve optimal physical conditioning within months, using acceleration chambers and genetic optimization. And yet, here we are, Reed replied with a slight smile. Perhaps there's something to be said for the slower path. Their drinks arrived, a luminescent blue liquid for Naira and something amber-colored for Reed. To unexpected discoveries, Reed said, raising his glass. Naira hesitated, then touched her glass to his. And to revised assumptions. The liquid was pleasantly warm as she sipped it, with complex flavors that reminded her of Cryoran festival spices. They sat in silence for a moment, the spectacular cosmic view above them painting their table with shifting patterns of starlight. Why did you invite me here, Captain Reed? Naira finally asked. Surely not just to discuss physical training methodologies. Reed set down his glass. Truthfulness, then? Very well. I'm curious about you. Commander Vex. For 3 days, we've sat across from each other at negotiation tables, exchanging diplomatic platitudes while saying nothing of substance. I thought perhaps in a less formal setting, we might have a more genuine conversation. About the mining rights? Naira asked cautiously. About anything. Why you became a military commander. What you think of Nexus Prime. Whether these negotiations have any chance of success. The directness was refreshing, if unexpected. I became a commander because excellence in service to Cryora is my family's tradition. Nexus Prime is impressively constructed, but inefficiently designed. Too much emphasis on aesthetics over functionality. She paused. As for the negotiations, that depends on whether both parties are negotiating in good faith. Reed's expression became more serious. And are they, in your opinion? Naira considered Dryos's instructions. The suspicion that humans might be using the talks as cover for other activities. I'm not certain. There are concerns on my side. As there are on mine, Reed admitted. Though perhaps not the concerns you might expect. Explain. Reed glanced around, then leaned closer. What I'm about to tell you is not widely known. We have intelligence suggesting that a weapons smuggling operation, the Blackar Syndicate, has established a significant presence in the tourist sector that your people are so interested in. The Earth Defense Force suspects they're using the area's limited oversight to move illegal armaments. Naira frowned. And you believe my government is involved? Not officially. No. But powerful interests sometimes operate outside official channels, just as they do in human governance. The implication was clear, and uncomfortably aligned with her own suspicions about General Dryos's eagerness to sabotage the negotiations, if necessary. Why tell me this? She asked. Because I believe you're someone who values truth, Commander. And because if there are elements on either side working to undermine these talks for their own benefit, perhaps those of us who genuinely seek a resolution should cooperate. Naira studied him, searching for signs of deception, finding none. She made a decision that went against everything in her military training. I have information as well. My superiors believe your delegation may be stalling while preparing for unauthorized resource extraction. Reed's brow furrowed. That's not happening, at least not to my knowledge. Could we both be being manipulated then? Used as diplomatic cover while other agendas play out? Reed took another sip of his drink, contemplating. It's possible. The question is, what do we do about it? Naira's communication device chimed again, but she ignored it. If your intelligence about weapons smuggling is accurate, that presents a security threat to both our interests. Perhaps a joint investigation would be productive. Off the record, of course, Reed added. Naturally. Reed smiled, raising his glass again. To unexpected alliances. Commander Vex. Naira, she corrected him, surprising herself. If we're to work together outside official channels, we might as well use names rather than titles. John. Then, he replied, his smile warming. And I think this could be the beginning of a very interesting partnership. The service corridors of Nexus Prime were a stark contrast to the gleaming public spaces above. Dim emergency lighting cast an eerie blue glow over exposed conduits and maintenance panels. The air was noticeably cooler and carried the scent of industrial lubricants and recycled atmosphere. These corridors run beneath the entire commercial district, John explained as he led Naira through the labyrinth. Maintenance crews use them to access critical systems without disrupting the visitor experience above. And you believe the Blackar Syndicate is using them to move contraband? John nodded, checking a small device in his hand. Security in these areas is minimal, mainly automated systems that can be bypassed if you know how. My contact indicated unusual energy signatures in this section, consistent with weapons-grade power cells. Naira's military training had her constantly scanning their surroundings, noting potential ambush points and escape routes. Her hand had almost fully healed thanks to the bone stimulator, though she still wore the stabilizer as a precaution. Your intelligence sources seem remarkably well informed for a diplomatic officer, she observed. John gave her a sidelong glance. Just as your combat readiness seems exceptional for a diplomatic commander. They shared a knowing look, both acknowledging the obvious. Neither was simply what their official titles suggested. Wait, John whispered, holding up a hand. He pressed himself against the wall, gesturing for Naira to do the same. Movement ahead. Naira strained her enhanced senses, detecting faint footsteps and the soft hum of powered equipment. They remained motionless as two figures passed through an intersection 30 meters ahead, pulling what appeared to be a hovering cargo container. "Syndicate operatives?" she whispered. "Likely. Standard maintenance crews wouldn't be in this section at this hour." John consulted his device again. The energy signature just spiked. Whatever they're transporting, it's high-powered. "We should follow them." John nodded, and they began moving silently down the corridor, maintaining distance from their targets. The operatives eventually stopped at a large maintenance hub, a circular chamber where multiple service tunnels converged. The two figures began transferring items from their cargo container to what appeared to be a concealed compartment in the floor. John and Naira observed from the shadows of an adjacent corridor, just close enough to see without being detected. "Disruptor rifles," Naira whispered, recognizing the distinctive profile of the weapons. "Military grade. Those are illegal in neutral space. And far too advanced for common smugglers," John added. "Someone with significant resources is backing this operation." A sudden noise from behind them, the clatter of a displaced maintenance tool, caused both operatives to look up sharply. "Someone's here!" one of them shouted, reaching for a weapon. "Time to go," John hissed, grabbing Naira's arm and pulling her back down the corridor as energy blasts scorched the wall where they had been standing. They ran, the sounds of pursuit close behind them. John led them through a bewildering series of turns, clearly familiar with the layout of the maintenance tunnels. "In here," he said, suddenly pulling open a small access door that led into what appeared to be a cramped equipment closet. Naira followed without hesitation, and John pulled the door shut just as their pursuers rounded the corner. The space was tiny, barely large enough for both of them. They stood pressed against each other in the darkness, hardly daring to breathe as footsteps approached their hiding place. "Where'd they go?" a gruff voice demanded. "Must have taken the east tunnel," another voice responded. "No other options down here." The footsteps receded, but neither John nor Naira moved immediately, listening to ensure their pursuers were truly gone. In the close confines of the closet, Naira became acutely aware of John's proximity, the warmth of his body, the controlled rhythm of his breathing, the faint scent that was distinctly human, yet somehow not unpleasant. "I think we're clear," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. Naira found herself strangely reluctant to move. "Yes," she agreed, her voice barely audible. Their eyes had adjusted to the darkness, allowing them to see each other's faces in the dim emergency lighting that seeped through the vents. John's expression was difficult to read, but his gaze was intense as it met hers. "You know," he said softly, "for someone who thought humans were physically inferior this morning, you're standing remarkably close to one right now." Naira felt an unfamiliar heat rise to her face. "Tactical necessity," she replied, but made no attempt to increase the negligible space between them. "Of course," John agreed, though the slight curve of his lips suggested amusement. "Purely tactical." Something shifted in the atmosphere between them, a tension that had nothing to do with the danger they had just escaped. Naira found her gaze drawn to his mouth, a completely irrational impulse taking hold. Later, she wouldn't be able to say with certainty who moved first. One moment they were standing in tense silence, and the next, his lips were on hers, or perhaps hers on his, fierce, hungry, and startlingly perfect. Her uninjured hand moved to the back of his neck, fingers threading through his short hair as the kiss deepened. His arms encircled her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. All thoughts of tactical positioning and military discipline evaporated in the heat of the moment. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Naira stared at him in confusion and wonder. "That was unexpected," John suggested, still holding her close. "Inadvisable," Naira corrected, though she made no move to extricate herself from his embrace. "We barely know each other." "Sometimes that's all it takes. One punch to the abdomen. One chase through maintenance tunnels. One kiss in a storage closet. Despite herself, Naira smiled. Is this how Earth diplomacy typically proceeds? Only the most successful negotiations, John replied with a grin. After a moment, his expression sobered. We should probably get back to safer territory. We have information to analyze, and I'd rather not push our luck with the syndicate tonight. Naira nodded, reluctantly stepping back as much as the confined space allowed. Agreed. Though I think we need to discuss this at some point. Definitely. John carefully opened the door, checking that the corridor was clear before they emerged. My quarters are in the diplomatic section. Secure and private. A good place to review what we've learned without raising suspicions. Naira hesitated, understanding the potential implications of accompanying him to his private quarters after what had just transpired between them. Her military training urged caution, reminding her of her mission and General Draus's expectations. But something stronger, curiosity, attraction, or perhaps a growing conviction that John Reed was someone she could trust, overrode those concerns. Lead the way, Captain, she said formally, though the look they shared was anything but professional. John's quarters in the diplomatic section were surprisingly austere for an Earth officer. Functional furnishings, minimal personal effects, and a viewport offering the same spectacular view of the nebula that the cosmic drift had featured. The main difference was the privacy. Security sweep complete, John announced after activating a small device that emitted a soft pulse of energy through the room. No active surveillance. We can speak freely. Naira surveyed the space with a tactical eye before allowing herself to relax slightly. Those were definitely Blackar Syndicate operatives. The question is, who are they supplying? John moved to a small console, transferring data from the device he had used to track the energy signatures. Based on the weapons we observed, they're preparing for something significant. Disruptor rifles of that caliber aren't for personal defense or small skirmishes. Could they be supplying my government? Naira asked directly, voicing the concern that had been growing since they'd witnessed the weapons cache. John looked up from the console, his expression grave. It's a possibility we have to consider, though the same could be said for elements within the Earth Defense Force. Before they could discuss further, Naira's communication device chimed with an incoming transmission. She checked the identifier and tensed. It's General Draus. I should take this. John nodded, moving toward the kitchen area to give her some privacy. I'll make us some coffee. Naira activated the communicator, and Draus's stern face appeared in holographic form once again. Commander Vex, your failure to respond to my earlier communication is noted. What progress have you made in your investigation of the Earth delegation? Naira straightened, falling back on years of military discipline to mask her inner turmoil. General, I've made contact with Captain Reed of the Earth Defense Force. I believe he may have valuable information regarding activities in the disputed sector. Draos's expression darkened. What kind of activities? Potentially illegal weapons trading, sir. I'm working to determine if the Earth delegation is involved. I see. Draus was silent for a moment, his gaze calculating. This could be useful leverage if confirmed. Continue your investigation, but remember your primary objective. If these negotiations seem likely to result in an agreement unfavorable to Cryeran interests, you are to find a way to ensure they fail. Understood, sir, Naira replied, keeping her expression neutral despite the growing unease she felt. Report back within 24 hours. Draus out. The hologram disappeared. John returned with 2 steaming cups, handing one to Naira. Everything all right? She accepted the drink, finding comfort in its warmth against her palms. My superior is eager for results. He seems particularly interested in finding reasons to terminate the negotiations. That aligns with what we observed tonight, John said, settling into a chair across from her. Someone wants to destabilize relations between our peoples, and the weapons we saw would certainly accomplish that if deployed. Naira took a sip of the coffee, finding its bitterness strangely appealing. I'm beginning to suspect General Draos might be involved with the syndicate, using them to create a pretext for more aggressive action in the disputed sector. And I'm concerned that elements within my own command might be complicit, John admitted. Admiral Perkins has been unusually insistent on maintaining a military presence in the region, even while participating in these peace talks. So both our superiors may be working against the very negotiations they publicly support. Naira shook her head in disgust. We need evidence, something concrete that would expose this conspiracy, regardless of who's involved. John nodded thoughtfully. The syndicate must be coordinating their activities with whoever's pulling the strings. If we could intercept their communications or witness a meeting between the parties involved. The Grand Nexus Hotel, Naira said suddenly. There's a secure conference room in the executive level that's often used for high-level private meetings. If Draus or your admiral were meeting with syndicate representatives, that would be an ideal location, neutral ground with guaranteed privacy. It's worth investigating, John agreed. But we'd need access to the hotel's security systems, or a way to monitor the conference room without being detected. I might have a solution for that, Naira said, reaching into a concealed pocket in her bodysuit. She withdrew a small, circular device, no larger than her thumbnail. Cryoren intelligence technology. It can record audio within a 20-meter radius and transmit on a secure frequency. If we could place it in the conference room before a meeting. John's eyebrows rose in appreciation. Impressive. Getting it into position would be the challenge. Not necessarily. As diplomatic representatives, we both have legitimate reasons to visit the hotel. We could request a tour of the facilities, claiming we're considering it for a formal reception. Simple but effective, John said with a smile. We'll go tomorrow morning. With their plan set, a sudden awkwardness descended between them. The intensity of their kiss in the maintenance closet hung unaddressed in the air, along with the question of what would happen next. John set down his coffee cup. It's late. You should probably return to your quarters before anyone notices your absence and starts asking questions. Naira nodded, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment at the practical suggestion. Yes, that would be wise. She stood to leave, but John rose as well, moving to stand before her. His hand gently reached for hers, the one that had been injured, turning it over and examining the nearly healed bone structure beneath the stabilizer. Remarkable recovery rate, he observed, his touch sending an unexpected current through her skin. Cryoren physiology, she explained, her voice softer than intended. Accelerated healing is one of our genetic advantages. One of many. I'm sure, John replied, his gaze lifting to meet hers. The tension between them returned, magnetic and undeniable. This time, there was no question about who initiated the kiss. Naira leaned forward deliberately, her lips finding his with purpose rather than impulse. His response was immediate, arms encircling her waist as he drew her against him. Where their first kiss had been fueled by adrenaline and surprise, this one was slower, more exploratory. Naira allowed herself to experience the sensation fully, the warmth of his mouth, the strength in his arms, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her chest. When they separated, she remained in his embrace, studying his face with newfound fascination. This complicates matters, she murmured. Life is complicated, John replied, tucking a strand of silver hair behind her ear. But some complications are worth embracing. Naira stepped back reluctantly. We need to focus on the mission. Whatever is happening between us, it can wait until we've uncovered the truth. John nodded, though his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Tomorrow, then, the Grand Nexus Hotel. Tomorrow, Naira agreed, moving toward the door. She paused before exiting, glancing back at him. "Good night, John." "Good night, Naira." As she made her way back to her own quarters, Naira's mind was a tumult of conflicting thoughts. Her duty to Creora, her suspicions about Dryos, her growing feelings for John, all collided in a whirlwind of uncertainty. For the first time in her career, she questioned the clarity of her mission. If Dryos was indeed conspiring with criminals to undermine the peace process, where did her true loyalty lie? To her direct superior, or to the broader interests of her people? And then there was John, a human who had shattered her preconceptions about his species, both physically and intellectually. A man who made her question assumptions she'd held her entire life. A potential ally in uncovering a dangerous conspiracy. And possibly something more. Naira touched her lips, still tingling from his kiss, and made a decision. Tomorrow they would find evidence of whatever plot was unfolding, and after that, she would face the consequences of her choices, whatever they might be. The following morning, Naira met John in the diplomatic quarters common area, both dressed in formal attire, appropriate for an official visit to the Grand Nexus Hotel. They maintained a professional distance in public, though the private glances they exchanged carried the weight of their shared secret. "Commander Vex, good morning," John greeted her formally. "Ready to inspect the potential reception venue?" "Captain Reed," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "Yes. I believe it's important to ensure the facilities meet both our delegation's standards." They walked side by side through the commercial district, their conversation deliberately mundane as they discussed fictional reception requirements. The Grand Nexus Hotel loomed before them, a towering structure of crystalline spires and sweeping archways, arguably the most prestigious establishment on Nexus Prime. The hotel manager, a tall Ventulian with iridescent skin, greeted them personally at the entrance. "Captain Reed, Commander Vex, what an honor to welcome representatives from both delegations. How may the Grand Nexus serve you today?" John assumed the lead, his diplomatic training evident in his polished response. "We're exploring options for a joint reception, should our negotiations prove successful. We'd like to tour your facilities, particularly your conference and event spaces." Of course," the manager effused, clearly delighted at the prospect of hosting such a prestigious event. "Please, follow me. I'll show you our finest offerings." As they toured the hotel's various spaces, Naira surreptitiously studied the security measures, camera placements, guard rotations, access points. John did the same, occasionally asking questions that seemed innocuous but provided valuable information about the hotel's operations. "And this," the manager announced with particular pride as they approached an ornate doorway, "is our executive conference suite, state-of-the-art security, complete privacy shielding, and accommodations for up to 20 delegates of various species." "May we see inside?" Naira asked. "The space sounds ideal for our needs." The manager hesitated. "I apologize, but the suite is currently being prepared for a private meeting this afternoon. However, I can show you our equally impressive celestial ballroom instead." John and Naira exchanged a brief look. A private meeting, potentially the very gathering they needed to monitor. "That's unfortunate," John said smoothly. "The timing of our reception is quite specific, and we were hoping to secure the executive suite. Perhaps we could just take a quick look. We wouldn't disturb the preparations." The manager wavered, clearly torn between accommodating important potential clients and maintaining the hotel's standards for privacy. "A brief look should be fine," he finally conceded. "But we must be quick." He unlocked the door, revealing a spacious, elegantly appointed conference room, dominated by a large oval table of polished black stone. Technical equipment for presentations and communications was discreetly integrated into the design, and a panoramic viewport offered a stunning view of Nexus Prime's cityscape. While John engaged the manager in conversation about catering options, deliberately positioning himself to block the Ventulian's view of Naira. She moved smoothly around the perimeter of the room, examining details with apparent interest. When she reached a decorative wall panel near the room's environmental controls, she deftly attached the tiny recording device, its surface adjusting to match the surrounding material. "The space is certainly impressive," Naira commented, rejoining them. "Though I'm curious about the adjacent facilities. Are there preparation areas nearby for staff?" The manager, eager to highlight the hotel's amenities, led them to a service door at the rear of the conference room. "Yes, indeed. We have a dedicated preparation area for each of our premium spaces. This way." As they exited through the service area, Naira activated the recording device remotely. Now, they would be able to monitor any conversation that took place in the conference room. "I believe we've seen enough to make our decision," John said as they completed the tour. "Thank you for your time. We'll discuss the options with our respective delegations and be in touch." Outside the hotel, they maintained their professional facade until they were well beyond the range of any potential observation. "The device is active," Naira confirmed in a low voice. "If there is a meeting in that room today, we'll hear everything." "Good work," John replied. "Now we wait. The recording will transmit to your quarters?" "Yes, on a secure frequency. We should be able to monitor it from there." They parted ways, agreeing to meet at Naira's quarters later that day to review whatever information the device captured. As Naira returned to her assigned diplomatic housing, her communication device chimed with an incoming message. She tensed, expecting General Draus, but was surprised to see it was from an unknown source. The message was brief and cryptic. "Medical anomaly detected in your scan yesterday. Urgent consultation required. Level 3 medical bay. 1400 hours." Naira frowned. Her hand had been fully healed this morning when she removed the stabilizer. What anomaly could the Taurian doctor have detected? Concern nagged at her as she went about her duties, but she resolved to keep the appointment. If there was something wrong with her physically, it could affect their mission. At 1400 hours precisely, Naira entered the Level 3 medical bay. Instead of the Taurian physician who had treated her hand, she was met by a female Taurian with bright blue skin and elaborate cranial ridges, clearly a different subspecies, but one known for their expertise in xenobiology. "Commander Vex," the Taurian greeted her. "Thank you for coming. I am Dr. Lynn Tora. Please, come with me to the private examination room." Once they were sealed in the secure room, Dr. Tora's demeanor changed from professional to urgently concerned. "Commander, I apologize for the cryptic message, but I needed to speak with you in absolute privacy. During your hand treatment yesterday, the standard medical scan detected something unexpected in your biological readings." Naira tensed. "What kind of unexpected?" Dr. Tora activated a holographic display showing complex biological data. "Your scan shows the presence of an early-stage embryonic formation. In simpler terms, Commander, you are pregnant." Naira stared at the display in shock. "That's impossible. I haven't... with any cryoran." She trailed off as realization struck her. John. But that was equally impossible. Cross-species reproduction between cryorans and humans had been attempted in laboratory settings without success. The genetic incompatibility was too great. "I can see you understand the implications," Dr. Tora said quietly. "The embryonic signature shows a hybrid genetic structure, part cryoran, part what appears to be human. This shouldn't be possible under known xenobiological principles." Naira's mind raced. How advanced is it?" "Very early stage. The conception would have occurred within the past 24 to 48 hours. That aligned with her first physical contact with John, the failed punch in the gym. Could some form of genetic transfer have occurred then? Or perhaps during their kisses? The science made no sense, but the evidence was apparently before her. "Who else knows about this?" Naira demanded. "No one," Dr. Tora assured her. "I intercepted the anomalous reading before it entered the main medical database. As a xenobiologist, I recognized its significance immediately. Why are you helping me? This information could be valuable to many parties. Dr. Tora's expression softened. Because I believe in science over politics, Commander. A viable cross-species embryo between humans and cryorans would be a biological breakthrough of immense significance. It suggests our species are far more compatible than previously believed, potentially rewriting our understanding of interspecies relations. Naira placed a protective hand over her abdomen, an instinctive gesture that surprised her. What happens now? That depends entirely on you, Dr. Tora replied. Medically, the embryo appears viable, though I would need to monitor its development closely. Politically, she trailed off, leaving the implications unspoken. A cryoran elite guard carrying a hybrid human child would face severe consequences, possibly court-martial, certainly the end of her career, potentially even charges of genetic contamination under the most extreme interpretations of cryoran law. I need to think, Naira said finally. And I need to speak with the father. Dr. Tora nodded, handing her a small medical device. This will allow you to monitor the embryo's basic life signs. It also contains my private communication code. Contact me when you've made a decision, or if you notice any changes. Naira left the medical bay in a daze, the device clutched in her hand. The revelation should have horrified her, a genetic impossibility that threatened everything she had worked for. Instead, she felt a strange, fierce protectiveness toward the impossible life beginning within her. A life that represented something unprecedented, a bridge between two species believed to be fundamentally incompatible. She needed to tell John, but first, she needed to check on their surveillance operation. The political conspiracy they were investigating suddenly seemed intertwined with her personal situation in ways she couldn't yet fully comprehend. When she reached her quarters, the recording device was already receiving transmission from the conference room. She activated the playback, hearing voices engaged in what sounded like casual pre-meeting conversation. She recognized one immediately, General Draus. Another voice joined the discussion, and Naira frowned as she identified Admiral Perkins of the Earth Defense Force. So both their superiors were indeed meeting secretly, away from the official negotiations. A third voice, unfamiliar and rough, completed the group. Gentlemen, shall we begin? The Blacker Syndicate has fulfilled its part of the arrangement. The weapons are in position. Naira's blood ran cold as she continued listening to the recording. The conspiracy was more extensive than they had imagined. General Draus and the Syndicate representative were outlining a plan to stage a false attack that would appear to be initiated by cryoran forces against Earth interests in the disputed sector. Admiral Perkins was being presented with evidence of supposed cryoran aggression elsewhere, clearly designed to convince him that a preemptive strike was justified. This is insanity, she whispered to herself. They're manufacturing a war. She needed to contact John immediately. As she reached for her communication device, a knock at her door startled her. Cautiously, she approached, checking the security viewer. John stood outside, his expression urgent. She opened the door quickly, pulling him inside. You need to hear this, she said without preamble, gesturing to the recording playback. I have something important to tell you too, John began, but fell silent as the voices from the conference room filled the space. Draos's voice was clear and cold. The beauty of this plan is its simplicity. Once the attack occurs, both our governments will be compelled to respond militarily. The disputed sector will become a conflict zone, allowing us to establish permanent military control rather than negotiating mining rights. The Syndicate representative laughed. And we supply both sides with advanced weaponry at premium prices. Everyone wins, except the poor fools who believe in diplomacy. Admiral Perkins sounded hesitant. The casualty projections are concerning. I was led to believe this would be a limited engagement. Collateral damage is inevitable in any military action. Draus dismissed. But the rewards justify the cost. Your government gets exclusive access to the secondary mineral deposits, while Cryora controls the primary veins. Far more advantageous than the current proposal to share equally. John's face hardened as he listened. We need to stop this. Agreed, Naira said. But how? It's their word against ours, and they'll simply deny the recording's authenticity. Not if we broadcast it to everyone, John suggested. The entire station, both delegations. If the public evidence is overwhelming, they won't be able to contain it. Naira considered this. We could modify the transmitter to connect with Nexus Prime's public announcement system, but we'd need to be in the central communications hub to do it, and that's heavily guarded. I might know another way, John said. There's a maintenance access point near the hotel that connects to the station's emergency broadcast system. It's designed to override all communication channels in case of a station-wide emergency. Perfect, Naira said. But we need to move quickly. Based on what we're hearing, their plan is already in motion. John nodded, but then placed a hand on her arm. Wait, you said you had something to tell me too. What is it? Naira hesitated. The revelation about her pregnancy seemed simultaneously crucial and irrelevant in the face of the conspiracy they'd uncovered. It can wait, she decided. Let's stop a war first. They gathered what equipment they needed and made their way toward the Grand Nexus Hotel, planning to intercept the conspirators as they left their meeting. The maintenance access point John had mentioned was located in a service area behind the hotel's main power distribution center. As they approached, Naira finally spoke the truth. John, there's something you need to know. It's biologically impossible, but apparently true. She took a deep breath. I'm pregnant, with what appears to be a human cryoran hybrid. John stopped walking, staring at her in shock. That's... how? I don't know. The doctor who discovered it was equally baffled. But the genetic markers are clear. It's yours and mine. John's expression shifted from shock to wonder, then to determination. All the more reason to stop this war before it starts. That child, our child, deserves a future where our species work together, not destroy each other. Naira felt a surge of relief at his reaction, followed by a renewed sense of purpose. Agreed. Let's make that future possible. They reached the access point, and John quickly went to work bypassing the security measures. Naira kept watch, her military training making her acutely aware of their vulnerability. Almost got it, John murmured as he connected their recording device to the emergency system. Suddenly, Naira's enhanced hearing caught the sound of approaching footsteps, multiple sets, moving with purpose. Someone's coming, she warned. Hurry! John made the final connection, just as the door to the service area burst open. 4 figures entered, 2 syndicate operatives with weapons drawn, followed by General Draus and Admiral Perkins. Commander Vex, Draus said coldly. I'm disappointed but not surprised. Your recent behavior suggested divided loyalties. General, Naira acknowledged, straightening to her full height. I could say the same about your loyalty to Cryora. Conspiring to start a war for profit hardly serves our people's interests. Draos's expression darkened. You understand nothing of true power. Commander, wars build empires. Peace merely maintains the status quo. Step away from the console, one of the syndicate operatives ordered, training his weapon on John. Instead of complying, John pressed the final activation sequence. Too late. Your entire conversation has just been broadcast throughout Nexus Prime. Everyone knows what you're planning now. Fury contorted Draus's features. Kill them both, he commanded the operatives. The next moments passed in a blur of action. Naira moved with the enhanced speed of a cryoran elite guard, disarming the nearest operative before he could fire. John tackled the second, his surprising strength once again proving an advantage. Admiral Perkins, apparently unwilling to participate in murder, backed away from the confrontation. "This has gone too far. Draus. I never agreed to assassination." Draus drew his own weapon, aiming it at Naira. "Then you're as weak as they are. Admiral." John saw the motion and lunged toward Naira, placing himself between her and the weapon, just as Draus fired. The energy blast struck John in the chest, sending him staggering backward but, remarkably, not dropping him. Naira seized the moment of confusion to launch herself at Draus, striking with precision at the nerve cluster beneath his jaw. The general collapsed, unconscious, before he hit the floor. The remaining syndicate operative, seeing the tide turn, attempted to flee, but was intercepted by station security officers responding to the commotion. "John!" Naira rushed to his side, expecting to find a severe injury where the energy blast had struck. Instead, she found only a burned hole in his clothing and reddened skin beneath. "I'm all right," he assured her, wincing slightly. "Told you humans might have some advantages you hadn't considered." Before she could respond, more security personnel flooded the area, accompanied by representatives from both the Earth and Krieran delegations. In the ensuing chaos, Naira and John were separated for questioning, each taken to secure rooms to explain what had occurred. Hours later, they were reunited in a neutral diplomatic space, both having told the same story, backed by the irrefutable evidence of the recorded conversation that had indeed been broadcast throughout Nexus Prime. The official position is that both governments are deeply concerned by the actions of rogue elements within their military hierarchies, John explained, sitting beside Naira on a bench overlooking the station's central garden. Draos and the syndicate operatives are in custody. Admiral Perkins has issued a public apology and is cooperating fully with the investigation. "And the negotiations?" Naira asked. "Back on track, with new representatives appointed by both sides. The scandal has actually accelerated the process. Neither government wants to appear reluctant to resolve the situation peacefully now." Naira nodded, then turned to face him directly. "And us? What happens now?" John took her hand gently. "That depends on many things. Your military might not be pleased with your actions, despite the justification." "They're not," she confirmed. "I've been placed on administrative leave pending a full review. But Dr. Tora has presented her findings about the hybrid embryo to the Krieran Science Academy, and that's caused quite a stir. It seems our impossible child might be my best defense against court-martial. A child that shouldn't exist, saving us from a war that should never have been," John mused. "There's a certain poetry to it." "Dr. Tora believes the pregnancy is viable," Naira continued. "She wants to monitor it closely, of course. The scientific implications are significant." "And the personal implications?" John asked softly. Naira met his gaze. "Those are even more significant. I've spent my entire career believing in the superiority of Krieran physiology and culture. In less than 2 days, you've challenged everything I thought I knew about humans, about myself, about what's possible between different species." "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" John asked, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "Good," Naira decided, squeezing his hand. "Definitely good. Truth is always preferable to comfortable illusions." "Then, perhaps we should explore more truths together," John suggested. "Whatever comes next, I want to face it with you, both the diplomatic fallout and the miracle growing inside you." Naira felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest, a sensation she was beginning to recognize as happiness. "I would like that. John Reed. Very much." 6 months later, Naira stood beside John on the observation platform, overlooking the newly established Human Krieran Exchange Center on Nexus Prime. Her pregnancy was now obvious, her abdomen swollen with the child that medical science had once declared impossible. Dr. Tora's regular examinations confirmed that the baby, a girl, was developing normally, with a fascinating blend of traits from both species. The diplomatic aftermath of the conspiracy had transformed the political landscape. Admiral Perkins, after providing extensive testimony about the plot, had initiated reforms within the Earth Defense Force to eliminate the militaristic faction that had supported the conflict. Similar purges had occurred within Krioran leadership, with General Draus and his allies facing serious charges. The mining rights that had been the original point of contention were now being jointly developed under a cooperative agreement that benefited both species. More importantly, the scientific breakthrough represented by Naira and John's child had sparked a renaissance in interspecies research and collaboration. Distinguished guests, Admiral Perkins announced from the podium, his voice carrying across the crowded center. Today marks not just the opening of this exchange center, but the beginning of a new chapter in relations between Earth and Cryora. Recent events have shown us the dangers of isolation and mistrust, and the potential benefits of true cooperation. Naira leaned slightly against John, finding comfort in his steadfast presence. His arm encircled her waist, hand resting protectively over their unborn daughter. At the heart of this new understanding, Perkins continued, are two individuals whose courage and integrity prevented a manufactured conflict and opened doors to possibilities we had never imagined. Commander Naira Vex and Captain John Reed exemplify the best of both our peoples, and the child they will soon welcome represents a future where our differences strengthen rather than divide us. The assembled crowd applauded, and Naira felt a flutter of movement from the baby, as if she too appreciated the recognition. She's going to be strong, John whispered, feeling the movement beneath his palm. Like her mother. And resilient, Naira added. Like her father. With abs of steel, perhaps? John laughed softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. I still can't believe you broke your hand punching me. Not the most conventional way to begin a relationship. We are not conventional people, Naira reminded him. And I wouldn't change a moment of it. Broken hand included. As Admiral Perkins concluded his speech and the formal ribbon-cutting ceremony began, Naira reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. From her initial contempt for human physiology to the profound respect and love she now felt for John. From believing in the unbridgeable differences between their species to carrying living proof of their compatibility. What are you thinking about? John asked, noticing her contemplative expression. About how quickly everything can change, she replied. 6 months ago, I believed humans were physically inferior, genetically incompatible, and diplomatically naive. Now I'm carrying a half-human child, participating in an unprecedented peace initiative and... She hesitated, then continued, and falling in love with a man who proved me wrong on every count. John's eyes softened. Is that what this is? Love? What else would you call it? Naira challenged, a hint of her old, fierce pride returning. Perfect, John answered simply. I'd call it perfect. As they stood together, watching the celebration of unity unfold before them, Naira placed her hand over John's, where it rested on their unborn daughter. The future held many uncertainties, medical, political, personal, but one thing was clear. The barriers between their peoples had been irreversibly breached, not by the weapons Draus and his conspirators had planned to use, but by understanding, courage, and the impossible child who represented hope for both worlds. Perfect, Naira agreed, turning to kiss him properly, unconcerned with the diplomatic audience around them. Though I still maintain Kryoran hearing is superior to human. John grinned against her lips. We'll see what our daughter has to say about that. And in that moment, surrounded by the fruits of peace, rather than the devastation of war, Naira Vex, Kryoran elite guard, expectant mother, and reformed xenophobe, knew that her broken hand had been the first crack in a wall that needed to fall. Sometimes, it took a punch to the abdomen to open one's eyes to a better future.